My girlfriend said, "Quit your startup. It's embarrassing dating someone without a real job." I said, "You're right." Then I sold my company for $3.1 million while she was job hunting. She found out when local news called me for an interview. I, 29M, thought I knew what embarrassment felt like until my girlfriend made me realize I didn't know anything. The coffee shop where she dropped the bomb was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and baristas who took longer to make your latte than most people spend deciding on a career. I remember the exact moment because I was mid-sip when she said it, and the bitter taste of disappointment mixed perfectly with the overpriced espresso. She told me I needed to quit my startup and get a real job because it was embarrassing dating someone who didn't have stable income. The words hit me like a freight train carrying a cargo of reality checks. She said her friends were asking questions, and she was tired of making excuses for why her boyfriend was still playing entrepreneur at 29. I sat there, watching her perfectly manicured fingers tap against her phone screen while she explained how her co-workers at the marketing firm were all dating guys with proper salaries, corner offices, and company cars. She mentioned how her sister's husband just got promoted to regional manager and bought a new BMW. The comparison game was in full swing, and apparently, I was losing. My startup was 3 years old, bootstrapped from my savings, and focused on developing AI-powered inventory management software for small businesses. Revenue was growing steadily, but we weren't exactly swimming in cash. I was paying myself just enough to cover rent and ramen noodles while reinvesting everything else back into the company. She knew this. She'd watch me work 18-hour days from my cramped apartment office, surviving on determination and caffeine. But that afternoon, something in her voice told me she was done with the struggle. She wanted security, predictability, and a boyfriend she could show off at dinner parties without having to explain what he did for a living. She said she loved me, but couldn't see a future with someone who might never amount to anything substantial. I told her she was right. The look of surprise on her face was almost worth the knife twisting in my chest. She'd expected an argument, maybe some promises about getting serious about job hunting. Instead, I agreed that my little startup was probably going nowhere and that I should focus on finding real employment. We finished our overpriced coffee in uncomfortable silence. She seemed relieved, but also slightly confused by my sudden surrender. I walked her to her car and kissed her goodbye, knowing it would be the last time. She drove away thinking she'd finally talked sense into her delusional boyfriend. What she didn't know was that I'd been in serious acquisition talks with Technova Solutions for the past 6 weeks. The negotiations had started when their CEO reached out after seeing our software demo at a regional tech conference. They were expanding their enterprise solutions division and needed exactly what we'd built. The preliminary offer was substantial enough to make me question whether I was dreaming or just severely sleep-deprived. But I hadn't told anyone about the talks, not even my business partner and best friend since college. The startup world is smaller than people think, and I'd learned the hard way that premature celebration can kill deals faster than bad code. We'd been through 3 rounds of due diligence, financial audits, and technical reviews. The final contracts were sitting in my lawyer's office, waiting for signatures. That night, after our coffee shop conversation, I called my lawyer and told him to move forward with the closing. If my girlfriend wanted me to quit my startup, then I'd quit my startup, just not in the way she imagined. The next morning, I signed the papers that transferred ownership of my company to Technova Solutions for $3.1 million. After taxes, legal fees, and splitting the proceeds with my partner, I was looking at enough money to buy several BMWs if I wanted. But mostly, I was looking at validation that 3 years of ramen noodles and 18-hour days had actually meant something. I decided not to tell her immediately. Part of me was curious to see how long her newfound enthusiasm for my job hunting would last. She started sending me links to corporate positions, encouraging me to update my LinkedIn profile, and offering to help me pick out interview clothes. The irony was almost too much to handle. 2 weeks later, she was laid off from her marketing firm. Budget cuts, they said. Nothing personal. She called me in tears, talking about how unstable the corporate world really was and how unfair it felt to lose her job without warning. I comforted her while silently noting that my embarrassing startup had never laid anyone off. She threw herself into job hunting with the same intensity she'd previously directed at reforming my career choices. Applications, networking events, LinkedIn messaging campaigns. It was impressive in its own way, watching her transform from confident corporate climber to anxious job seeker practically overnight. Meanwhile, I was fielding calls from headhunters who'd heard about the acquisition through industry channels. Word travels fast in tech circles when someone successfully exits their company. The same Technova executives who'd bought my startup were recommending me for consulting opportunities and board positions. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know what my next move would be. But I kept quiet, and played the part of supportive boyfriend helping his unemployed girlfriend navigate the job market. I even went to a few networking events with her, watching her pitch herself to the same type of corporate managers she'd once aspired to impress on my behalf. 3 months after the acquisition, I got the call I'd been expecting. The local business journal wanted to do a feature story about young entrepreneurs who'd successfully sold their companies during the economic uncertainty. They'd gotten my name from Technova's PR team and wanted to schedule an interview about my journey from broke founder to millionaire entrepreneur. I agreed to the interview, but asked them not to publish anything until the following week. I wanted to handle the personal side of things first. That evening, I cooked dinner for my girlfriend and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. She was excited, thinking I might be celebrating a job offer. We'd been together for 2 years, and she knew I wasn't usually spontaneous with romantic gestures. Over dessert, I told her about the acquisition. The color drained from her face as I explained how I'd sold the company the day after our coffee shop conversation. How I'd been sitting on the news for 3 months while she encouraged me to abandon entrepreneurship and join the corporate world. How the same startup she'd called embarrassing had been worth more than most people make in a lifetime. She asked why I hadn't told her sooner, and I explained that I'd wanted to see if she truly believed what she'd said about my company being worthless. Turns out, she had. Even after watching me work tirelessly for 3 years, she genuinely thought I was wasting my time on a hobby that would never amount to anything. The conversation got heated quickly. She accused me of lying by omission and manipulating her into job hunting while I was secretly rich. I reminded her that she demanded I quit my startup without knowing anything about its actual prospects or potential. We were both right and both wrong, but mostly we were incompatible in ways that money couldn't fix. She moved out the following weekend. The Business Journal article came out on Thursday morning. The headline read, "Local entrepreneur sells AI startup for $3.1 million, plans angel investment fund." The piece included a photo of me standing outside Technova's headquarters, shaking hands with their CEO. My phone started buzzing before I'd finished reading the article myself. The first call was from my ex-girlfriend. She'd seen the article shared on social media and wanted to talk. She said she'd made a mistake and that she'd never doubted my potential, just worried about our financial stability. She suggested we grab coffee to discuss everything, maybe at that same trendy place where she'd originally delivered her ultimatum. I thanked her for calling, but declined the coffee invitation. The next few calls were from local reporters wanting follow-up interviews, investors interested in my next venture, and former colleagues congratulating me on the exit. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was her sister, the one married to the BMW driving regional manager. She wanted to know if I was planning to start another company and whether I might need marketing consultants. She mentioned that her husband's company was always looking for successful entrepreneurs to partner with on new ventures. I politely told her I wasn't looking for marketing help at the moment. Throughout the day, I received dozens of LinkedIn messages from people who'd previously ignored my startup updates, but were now very interested in staying connected. Former classmates emerged from social media hibernation to congratulate me on my success and suggest we catch up over drinks. The same networking events that had once felt like uphill battles were now sending me VIP invitations. But the most interesting call came from my ex-girlfriend's former coworker, someone I'd met briefly at a company happy hour months earlier. She mentioned that she'd always thought my startup sounded promising and wondered if I might be interested in grabbing dinner sometime to discuss entrepreneurship and innovation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Update 1. A month after the article published, I ran into my ex-girlfriend at the grocery store. She looked tired, still job hunting, still adjusting to the reality that corporate security wasn't as secure as she'd believed. She asked how I was doing, and I told her I was doing well, working on launching an angel investment fund to help other early-stage startups. She mentioned that she'd been thinking a lot about our conversation at the coffee shop and realized she might have been too hasty in her judgment. She said she'd learned a lot about risk and reward during her own job search and had gained new respect for entrepreneurs who bet on themselves. I appreciated her honesty, but I also recognized that her newfound respect for entrepreneurship had coincided pretty conveniently with learning about my exit value. She asked if we could try again, start fresh, maybe build something together now that we were both in different places. She'd been thinking about starting her own marketing consultancy and thought we might make a good team. I told her I thought she'd make an excellent entrepreneur, but that we'd both moved on to different chapters of our lives. I wished her luck with her consultancy and meant it sincerely. As I loaded groceries into my car, I reflected on how much had changed in 4 months. The same person who'd been embarrassed to date a startup founder was now asking to partner with a successful entrepreneur. The same relationship that had ended over financial insecurity was being offered a second chance now that the money wasn't a concern. But the experience had taught me something valuable about compatibility and values. Money changes circumstances, but it doesn't change character. Someone who loves you for your bank account will find reasons to leave when your bank account changes. Someone who believes in your dreams will stick around even when those dreams look impossible. Update 2. 6 months post-acquisition, I launched the Angel Fund with $500,000 of my own money and commitments from several other local investors who'd heard about the Technova deal. Our first investment was in a logistics startup run by a 26-year-old who'd been bootstrapping for 2 years while working a night shift at a warehouse. The founder reminded me of myself at that stage, exhausted, determined, and constantly explaining to people why his idea wasn't crazy. His girlfriend had stuck with him through the worst of it, working extra shifts as a nurse to help cover their rent while he reinvested every dollar into the company. During our first board meeting, I watched them interact and remembered what supportive partnership looked like. She asked informed questions about the business metrics and offered practical suggestions about customer acquisition. She was genuinely excited about his success, not because of what it meant for her social status, but because she'd watched him pour his heart into building something meaningful. That's when I realized what I'd really lost wasn't just a girlfriend, but the opportunity to build something together with someone who believed in shared dreams over individual security. My ex-girlfriend's marketing consultancy launched around the same time as my fund. She'd found her entrepreneurial spirit after all, just not in the way either of us had expected. Through mutual connections, I heard she was doing well, landing clients, and building a reputation for strategic thinking and creative campaigns. I was genuinely happy for her success, but I also noticed she'd started dating another entrepreneur, someone who'd sold his e-commerce company the year before and was working on his next venture. Apparently, she'd developed quite an appreciation for the startup ecosystem. The whole situation would have been more bitter if it weren't so perfectly ironic. My investment fund is now managing $2.8 million across 12 portfolio companies. 3 of those investments are already showing strong traction, and 2 are in advanced acquisition talks with larger firms. The 26-year-old logistics founder just closed his Series A at a $15 million valuation. But the real success isn't measured in dollars returned or companies exited. It's measured in the relationships built, the dreams supported, and the understanding that true partnership means believing in someone's potential even when that potential isn't immediately profitable. The coffee shop where this whole story started has become something of a regular spot for me again. Not for dramatic relationship conversations, but for meetings with potential portfolio founders who are still in the ramen noodles and 18-hour days phase of building their companies. Sometimes I see couples having intense conversations at those same exposed brick walls, and I wonder if I'm witnessing someone else's moment of choosing between safety and support, between embarrassment and encouragement. I always hope they choose support. Because the most embarrassing thing isn't dating someone without a traditional job. The most embarrassing thing is realizing you gave up on someone's dreams right before they came true, and that you valued other people's opinions more than your own partner's potential. The $3.1 million was nice, but the clarity about what really matters was priceless. And that's a lesson worth more than any acquisition could ever teach.